For humans, like birds, life is complicated because of two of their reproductive habits. Males invest in their offspring, but fertilization happens out of sight inside the female's body. So a male never knows which offspring are his. A female, in contrast, can be certain that any egg or baby coming out of her body carries her genes. A cuckolded male is worse than a celibate one in the evolutionary struggle, and male birds have evolved defenses against it. So have humans. Sexual jealousy is found in all cultures. Both sexes can feel intense jealousy at the thought of a dallying mate. But their emotions are different in two ways. Women's jealousy appears to be under the control of more sophisticated software, and they can appraise their circumstances and determine whether the man's behavior poses a threat to their ultimate interests. Men's jealousy is cruder and more easily triggered. Once triggered, however, women's jealousy appears to be as intensely felt as men's. In most societies, some women readily share a husband, but in no society do men readily share a wife. A woman having sex with another man is always a threat to the man's genetic interests, because it might fool him into working for a competitor's genes. But a man having sex with another woman is not necessarily a threat to the woman's genetic interests, because his illegitimate child is another woman's problem. It is only a threat if the man diverts investment from her and her children to the other woman and her children, either temporarily or, in the case of desertion, permanently. So men and women should be jealous of different things. Men should squirm at the thought of their wives or girlfriends having sex with another man. Women should squirm at the thought of their husbands or boyfriends giving time, resources, attention, and affection to another woman. Of course, no one likes to think of their mate offering sex or affection to anyone else, but even then the reasons may differ. Men may be upset about affection because it could lead to sex. Women may be upset about sex because it could lead to affection. And Buss found that men and women are made as jealous by the thought of alienated sex as by the thought of alienated affection. But when asked to pick their torture, most men said that they were more upset by the thought of their partner being sexually unfaithful than emotionally unfaithful, and most women had the opposite reaction. The same differences are found when men and women imagine their partners being both sexually and emotionally unfaithful and are asked which aspect of the betrayal bothers them more. And so, that means that So women said they are more upset by the thought of their partner being emotionally unfaithful than sexually unfaithful. And of course, this betrayal bothers them more. And that shows that the sex differences is not just a matter of men and women having different expectations of their partner's behavior. The men worrying that a woman having sex must also be in love, and the women worrying that a man in love must also be having sex. Buss then pasted electrodes on people and asked them to imagine the two kinds of treachery. The men sweated, frowned, and palpitated more from images of sexual betrayal. The women sweated, frowned, and palpitated more from images of emotional betrayal. Similar results have been found in several countries in Europe and Asia. It takes two to commit adultery, and men, always the more violent sex, have directed their anger at both parties. The largest cause of spousal abuse and spousal homicide is sexual jealousy, almost always the man's sexual jealousy, and men beat and kill their wives and girlfriends in order to punish them for a real or imagined infidelity, and to deter them from becoming unfaithful or leaving them. Women beat and kill their husbands in self-defense, or after years and years of abuse. Critics of feminism have made much of the occasional statistic that American men are victims of beating and homicide by their spouses almost as often as the women are. But that is not true in the vast majority of communities, and even in the few where it is. The husband's jealousy and intimidation are almost always the cause. Often a morbidly jealous man will imprison his wife in the house and interpret every incoming phone call as proof that she is unfaithful. Women are most at risk when they threaten to leave or do it. The forsaken man may stalk her, hunt her down, and execute her, always with the same rationale. If I cannot have her, no one can. And so the crime is pointless, but It is the undesired outcome of a paradoxical tactic, a doomsday machine. For every killing of an estranged wife or girlfriend, there must be thousands of threats made credible by signs that the man is crazy enough to carry them out regardless of the cost. And so many pundits blame violence against women on this or that feature of American society, such as circumcision or war toys, James Bond, or football. But it happens worldwide, including in foraging societies. Among the Yanomamo, which we've discussed, a man who suspects his wife of infidelity might slash her with a machete, shoot her with an arrow, hold an ember against her, cut off her ears, or simply just kill her. Even among the Kongsan of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, men batter wives they suspect of being unfaithful. Incidentally, none of these points condone the violence or imply that it is not the man's fault, as it is sometimes claimed. Those non sequiturs could be attached to any explanation, such as the common feminist theory that men are brainwashed by media images that glorify violence against women. All over the world, however, men also beat and kill cuckolds and suspected cuckolds. Recall that rivalry over women is the leading cause of violence, homicide, and warfare among foraging peoples. As it is written in Proverbs 6:34, "For jealousy is the rage of a man, therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance." Unlike birds, though, humans plug their sexual jealousy into a Baroque cognitive machine. People think in metaphors, and the metaphor that men always have used for wives is property. Men do not merely aim to control their wives and fend off rivals. They assert an entitlement to wives, especially their reproductive capacity, identical to the right of an owner over inanimate property. An owner can sell, exchange, dispose of his possessions, can modify them without interference, and can demand redress for theft or damage. These rights are recognized by the rest of society and can be enforced by collective reprisals. In culture after culture, men have deployed the full cognitive apparatus of ownership and conceiving of their relationship to their wives, and until recently they have formalized the metaphor in codes of law. In most societies, marriage is a blatant transfer of ownership of a woman from her father to her husband. In our own marriage ceremony, the father of the bride still gives her away, but more commonly he sells her. In 70% of societies, someone pays when two people get married. In 96% of these, the groom or his family pays the bride's family, sometimes in cash or simply by paying with a daughter, sometimes in bride service, whereby the groom works for the bride's father for a fixed period of time. For example, in the Biblos, or the book, the Bible, Jacob worked for Laban for 7 years for the right to marry his daughter Rachel, but Laban substituted his other daughter, Leah, at the wedding. So Jacob had to work another 7 years to acquire Rachel as his second wife. And so also dowries, which are more familiar to us, are not a minor image of bride wealth because they go to the newlyweds, not to the bride's parents. The husband notifies other men of his ownership in customs retained by many modern couples. The woman, not the man, wears an engagement ring, bears her spouse's surname, and is given a new form of address, Mrs., short for mistress of. And so people can control their property, and husbands, and before them, fathers and brothers, have controlled women's sexuality. They have used chaperones, veils, segregation by sex, confinement, genital mutilation, foot binding in Asian cultures, and the many ingenious designs for chastity belts. Despots not only keep harems, but also keep them guarded. In traditional societies, protecting a woman was a euphemism for keeping her chaste. Mae West once observed, quote, "Men always say that they are protecting you, but they never say from what," end quote. Only fertile women were controlled in these ways. Children and postmenopausal women had more freedom. And so the word adultery is related to the word adulterate and refers to making a woman impure by introducing an improper substance. The infamous double standard in which a married woman's philandering is punished more severely than a man's is common in legal and moral codes in all kinds of societies. Its rationale was succinctly captured when James Boswell remarked, quote, "There is a great difference between the offense of infidelity in a man and that of his wife. End quote. And Samuel Johnson replied, quote, "The difference is boundless. The man imposes no bastards on his wife," end quote. Both the married woman and her lover are commonly punishable, often by death, but the symmetry is illusory, because it is the woman's marital status, not the man's, that makes it a crime, specifically a crime against her husband. And until recently, most of the world's legal systems treated adultery as a property violation or tort. The husband was entitled to damages, a refund of the bride price, a divorce, or the right to violent revenge. Rape was also an offense against the woman's husband, not against the woman. Elopement was considered an abduction of a daughter from her father, and until very recently, the rape of a woman by her husband was not a crime, or even a coherent concept. Husbands were entitled to sex with their wives whenever they wanted. Of course, throughout the English-speaking world, the common law recognizes three circumstances that reduce murder to manslaughter: self-defense, the defense of close relatives, and sexual contact with the man's wife. Wilson and Daly observed that they are the three main threats to Darwinian fitness, and in several American states, including Texas as recently in 1974, a man who had discovered his wife in flagrant delicto and killed her lover was not guilty of a crime. And even today, in many places, those homicides are not prosecuted or the killer is treated leniently. Jealous rage at the sight of a wife's adultery is cited as one of the ways a quote-unquote reasonable man can be expected to behave. And, of course, there is a discussion concerning the evolutionary psychology of sexuality and connection to feminist theory, but in today's intellectual climate, it is impossible to talk about evolutionary psychology of sexuality without feminist theory. So, the Darwinian approach to sex is often attacked as being anti-feminist, but that is just plain wrong. Indeed, the accusation is baffling on the face of it, especially to the many feminist women who have developed and tested the theory. And so the core of feminism is surely the goal of ending sexual discrimination, exploitation, and ethical and political position that is in no danger of being refuted by any foreseeable scientific theory or discovery. Sex differences are in the psychology of reproduction.